When my birth parents found me, I was standing ankle deep in a drainage trench behind a pig shed, turning compost with the summer rain had been falling since dawn. It turned the yard into a sour brown mirror and pasted my shirt to my back. I had rubbed soot from the stove over my collar and sleeves before I came outside. I had also chosen the ugliest pair of rubber boots in the house, the ones split at the seam, because I remembered exactly how my adopted sister had looked at me in my previous life, not with pity, but with she had wanted a contrast. The dirtier I looked, the cleaner she seemed. The black SUVs stopped beside the broken wall, one after another, sending muddy water in thin fans over the weeds. The village headman came first, sweating through his undershirt even in the rain. Behind him walked a woman in cream cashmere and pearl earrings, a tall man with a storm coat draped over his, and a girl in a pale pink suit whose shoes were too expensive for a mountain road. The woman stared at me as if the world had narrowed to a single point.
June, she
whispered. No one had called me by that. In the village I had been mud, ghost, mule, or on good days girl. My foster mother said I had been bought cheap from a broker who had too many children and not enough patience. My foster brother used to laugh and say that if I worked hard enough, I might one day earn a bed inside the kitchen instead. The woman stepped forward and caught my filthy hands inside both of hers. Her palms were warm. I am your mother, she said, and the tears arrived in her eyes so quickly they looked rehearsed. I bowed my head and let my only I was not crying for what she thought. I was crying because in my last life, I had believed her. In my last life, I had thrown myself into the Mercer family like a starving dog into a feast. I mistook apology for love, guilt for loyalty, and politeness for protection. Alina Mercer, the orphan they had adopted, when they believed their own daughter was dead, had smiled, called me sister, lent me, held my hand in front of guests, and planted one trap after another behind closed doors. By the time I understood what she was doing, my father no longer trusted me. My mother thought I was unstable, and the engagement Alina wanted for herself had already become another knife aimed at my throat. When I tried to expose her, she and her boyfriend arranged a lesson. I was bundled into a van outside a charity gala, driven toward the border, drugged, beaten, and sold again to the same network. I died in a concrete room behind a trucking yard with my wrists zip-tied and a broken tooth cutting the inside of my. The last thing I heard was Alina crying prettily on television, telling reporters she wished her poor, troubled sister had. Then I opened my eyes in the pig shed. Years earlier, the smell of fermented feed, thick as punishment, and understood I had. So when my mother called me June in that rain-soaked yard, I lifted my head slowly, enough for her to see the soot on my face. Alina pinched her nose with two elegant
fingers.
Are we sure? She asked. You
said the child you lost had a birthmark on. Lots of country girls could have that. I turned toward her with a bright, open smile and took an eager step forward.
You must be my sister.
The bucket beside my foot tipped exactly when I meant it to. Brown slurry splashed over the hem of her tailored trousers and up one cream stocking. Alina gave a shriek so sharp, I dropped to my knees before anyone could
Move. I'm sorry, I cried.
Please do not.
Hit me?
I did not mean to. I will clean it. Please do not make me kneel on bricks. Again, my mother went white. My father's face hardened like poured stone. Alina stared down at me, her outrage trapped under too many watchful eyes. They took me away that afternoon. My foster mother shouted about ingratitude, then about compensation, then about the cost of rice and medicine, and my father told his lawyer to handle it. He did not raise his voice, yet the woman who had beaten me with a broom handle for breaking an egg backed away as though he. In the car, my mother wrapped me in a wool blanket that smelled faintly of iris perfume. She asked if I was cold, hungry, dizzy, afraid of city roads or cars or men in suits or sleeping in a house with. She asked too many questions because she did not know the right ones. I answered, with the caution of someone crossing, I'm all right. Alina sat opposite me, one leg crossed neatly over the other, her ruined clothes changed for fresh ones from. Every now and then she glanced at me and then out the window as if afraid. Resentment might look ugly if it lingered. My father remained silent until the city skyline rose through the rain. Then he said, "Your name was June Rowan at birth.
If you would rather use your full family name,
Again, you can. No one will force you." I tucked my blistered hands beneath the I do not want to take too much at once. I saw the words land. My mother's eyes filled again. My father turned toward Alina's jaw tightened just enough for me to notice. At the Mercer estate, my mother guided me upstairs and opened door after door. A blue room with a balcony over the east, a cream suite beside the conservatory, another lined in walnut with a sitting
room attached.
before. Alina had urged me to take hers. I had believed the gesture sincere. Later, she used the hidden key planted cash, jewelry, and pills in my drawers. Then found them at the perfect moments. This time, when my mother asked which room I liked, I touched the brass knob of the smallest guest room tucked beside
This one, I said softly.
My mother blinked.
that tiny room. Why? Because it already has curtains, I answered. It feels
More than enough.
sometimes the quickest route to a person's heart is not by asking for love, but by asking for. The doctor came within the hour. He unwrapped the bandages on my shoulders and back while my mother stood beside the bed clutching a handkerchief each knew. I had scars from rope burns, old welts, from switches, a white line along my ribs where a rusted pail had split the skin, and a half-healed gash at my left hip from slipping on a stone path while carrying.
Fodder.
Most were from this life. Some had older twins from the last repeated blunt force injuries, the doctor said carefully. And this one here should have been
Stitched.
My father asked no questions. While the doctor worked, he simply listened with the expression of a man discovering there are crimes wealth cannot reverse. Alina appeared at the door carrying a glass of warm milk on a tray. I thought, she might want something comforting. Leave it there. Alina hesitated. I only wanted to help. I looked up from the bed, wide-eyed and grateful.
Thank you, sister.
She disliked that title when spoken in front of others.
it
Made her appear cruel if she refused it. Later, after everyone left, I emptied the milk into the flower pot by the window. In my last life, I drank everything offered to me because I still believed family meals were holy. That naivety ended the night I woke. Vomiting blood after a tonic, Alina said, would help me sleep before my entrance. She had only wanted me too weak to sit the
Test.
I survived.
The plant did not.
The.
Next morning, my mother took me shopping. She wanted to buy half the city in. Apology, dresses, coats, shoes, silk, pajamas, a watch so expensive I thought it. I let the saleswomen measure me, pin hems, and fuss over skin still rough from soap lye. But each time my mother asked whether I liked something, I paused too long before, answering yes as though luxury still. By the third boutique, she was holding my
Hand.
By the fourth, she called me sweetheart without thinking. That evening, when my father came home, he found the purchase receipts spread across the breakfast table and did not complain. He simply asked whether I needed a tutor. Before joining St. Aurelia Academy, before I could answer, Alina laughed. But Aurelia teaches half the senior curriculum in English. The adjustment might be difficult. I lowered my eyes. Maybe I should study first.
My mother's
Mouth tightened. Or maybe no one needs to tell my daughter what she can't do. St. Aurelia Academy was built to produce ministers, heirs, and its front lawn rolled down toward Anne. Artificial lake lined with imported plain.
trees.
Its students wore blazers stitched. The classroom smelled of polished wood and expensive indifference.
if you had
Never been humiliated there, it looked. I entered on a Monday with my hair tied back in a plain ribbon and my expression pitched carefully between awe and caution. My mother had asked 3 times whether I wanted her to accompany me inside. I said no and saw relief and hurt cross her face. Alina walked 2 steps ahead of me until we reached the main corridor.
Then she.
Slowed, touched my sleeve, and turned with, if you get lost, just message me. Her friends watched from the lockers. In my first life, they had welcomed me with embraces, then added me to group chats, where they mocked my accent, my table manners, and the way I held cutlery like a survivalist. This time I smiled back.
Thank you.
You are always so kind. She heard the blade hidden in it. Her friends did not. At orientation, the vice principal introduced me as the Mercer family's long-lost daughter. Murmurs rippled across. Pity was never far from curiosity in
Places like that.
Each fed the other well. Then he asked whether I would like to say, in my previous life I had panicked and confessed too much, the mountain village. The hunger, the beatings, the old fear of I left the stage raw and they feasted on my vulnerability for months.
Now I stepped
To the lectern, adjusted the microphone. I'm still learning the city, the school, and where the bathrooms are. So if anyone sees me walking in circles, please rescue. I work hard, I listen well, and I do not mind starting late as long as I am allowed to start. I'm grateful to be here.
that.
No offering of my wounds for public consumption. By lunchtime, 3 girls from the debate society had invited me to sit with them. Simply because restraint intrigues that when you do not perform desperation, they cannot quite decide where to place you. In literature class, the teacher asked us to compare 2 translations of a sonnet. Alina smirked from the window row. Certain, instead, I discussed the rhythm shifts in clean, measured English. The teacher's brows rose. Excellent ear, June. A boy behind me muttered, didn't see that coming. I pretended not to hear. Alina did hear, and the little line between her brows deepened. It is hard to manipulate the narrative around someone who refuses to play the part assigned to her. Within a week, a missing worksheet, a switched locker, number, rumors that I had cried in the restroom. After mispronouncing a French phrase in art history, though I had not spoken once, then came the girls from Alina's circle, all perfect nails and teeth too white to trust, who invited me to sit with them. One of them, Celeste Hahn, tilted her head and asked, June, is it true you have never used a dishwasher? I smiled. Is it true you have never fixed a roof tile? During monsoon season, the boys at the next table laughed. Celeste did not. Alina, if mockery failed, she would use concern. At a family dinner that Friday, she spooned sea bass onto my plate and said I hope she does not think she has to stay thin to fit in here. I lowered my fork. I'm still learning that food can be eaten. Where I lived, if you did not finish fast, someone else did. The table fell silent. My mother put down her knife. My father asked the staff to bring dessert to my room later, then excused himself from dinner to make a phone call that I later learned with a second investigation into every household, connected to the broker who had sold me. Alina did not speak for the rest of the meal. Still, the most dangerous battlefields are the ones parents never. The music corridor after ensemble practice, the narrow back stairwell, between the science labs and the old, those were the places where girls tested one another's edges. One afternoon, I found my uniform blazer in the restroom sink, soaked through with red sports drink. A folded note lay on.
You still won't belong.
I photographed it before touching anything. Then I carried the ruined blazer to the housekeeper responsible for school. Uniforms asked politely whether the stain and made sure 3 students saw my hands, shaking while I spoke. By evening, the photograph had found its way into the mother's private charity chat, accompanied by concern over how I never named Alina. I did not need to. Guilt travels faster than accusation in polished circles, and fear of being suspected is often harsher than being. The first person outside my family to become useful was Adrian Vale. He was the illegitimate elder son of shipping magnate Leonard Vale, a young man the tabloids alternately described as unstable or cursed depending on how little they understood his silence. At school, he had graduated years before, but his name still lingered in hallways because teachers used him as a cautionary genius without obedience, talent without gratitude, ambition without a proper last name. I met him in my father's study. He had come to discuss a land dispute on behalf of the Vale Group. My father admired his, my mother distrusted both. Alina feared him, which was reason enough for me to be interested. He stood by the bookshelves in a charcoal suit, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a fountain pen with the a faint scar cut through one eyebrow. When he looked at me, it felt less like being seen and more like being measured. This, my daughter? Adrian's gaze sharpened, almost invisibly. Welcome home, he said, just 3 words, but unlike the others, he did not lace them with pity, curiosity, or moral instruction. Later, when the meeting ended, he found me in the winter garden staring at a koi pond, the color of old coins. You watched the room before you answered. Anyone, he said. That is not a habit wealthy daughters are usually raised with. Maybe I was not raised as one.
No, he said mildly.
You were raised among people who taught you to survive first and speak second. And you, I asked, were you raised among people who taught you to look at knives and call them tableware, something almost like. He glanced toward the house where my sister's silhouette moved behind the upstairs curtains.
If you are wise, he said, you will keep records.
Of what? Everything. He left. Before I could ask another question, that night, I ordered 3 miniature cameras, 2 voice recorders, and a cloud storage subscription under the account of a shell company my father did not know I had already traced from one of. Before she started hunting in earnest, I intended to turn the forest into a map. Adrian Vale had not offered friendship. For people like us, that was often the more valuable kindness. Alina's boyfriend arrived disguised as charm. His name was Rowan Keene, heir apparent to the Keene biotech fortune, class president in his final year at St. Aurelia's University affiliate, and beloved by mothers who thought easy. Manners meant good character. He played cello badly, tennis beautifully, and every room as if it existed to admire
Him.
when he began appearing at Mercer dinners. My mother pretended not to notice the intimacy between him and Alina. My father noticed and withheld comment. Because he preferred alliances to scenes, I noticed and counted the ways Rowan's attention moved whenever Prophet entered the room. In my first life, Alina used she let him flirt with me when she wanted to test my boundaries, pulled him back when she wanted to remind me I had no, and finally used his company's scholarship foundation to frame me for falsifying volunteer hours. He smiled while helping ruin me. This time, I never let him imagine I wanted anything from him. That irritated him. At a museum fundraiser, he cornered me beside a bronze horse and said, "You are harder to impress than your sister." My sister is easier to lie to than I am. His smile flickered. That is a dangerous thing to say.
So is.
Assuming I'm speaking about you. A week later, he sent roses to the house I carried them straight to my mother's breakfast room and set them on the table, between the marmalade and the financial. Rowan sent these by mistake, I said. Would you have them redirected to Alina? I would hate for there to be confusion.
My?
Mother looked from the card to my face too. The flowers and something old-fashioned. Of course, she said. Alina came downstairs 10 minutes later to find the roses gone. At school, she confronted me. You think you're clever? I think delivery services should be more careful. She stepped closer, lowering her voice.
Rowan told me you encouraged him.
My eyes widened with wounded surprise then. Blinked back, tears. If you believe that, I'm sorry for both of us. By lunch, half the senior girls had heard that Alina accused her newly found sister of seducing her own boyfriend, and half of them were disgusted not with me, but with the fact that Rowan sent flowers in the first place. One lie too many, poorly timed, always reveals the shape of the liar. The real war began with a bracelet. It belonged to my grandmother, a narrow band of hammered gold set with a single Rove sapphire, more sentimental than my mother had wept when she fastened it around my wrist after a quiet dinner, and said she wanted her first granddaughter. I kept it for too long already. I thanked her. I also photographed the clasp, the inner engraving, and the way the metal sat. 3 days later, the bracelet vanished. In my previous life, I had searched my room in blind panic while Alina stood. Then the bracelet turned up beneath a folded sweater in my drawer, and the damage was done before I understood this time, when I found my jewelry box open and the bracelet missing, I did not cry or search. I sent a single message to. His reply arrived 30 seconds later. Good. So, are you? Then I went downstairs for tea. At 5:30, Alina entered she carried a silver tray, poured jasmine for my mother, black Assam for my father, and a fruit infusion for me. The detail would have looked loving too. Anyone else? To me, it looked like planning. My mother touched her wrist. Where is mother's bracelet? I sat down. My cup slowly. I was going to ask the same. Alina's face changed by June. Are you implying something? I am. Saying it is missing. My father searched the rooms. 10 minutes later, a housemaid returned holding the bracelet in a linen napkin. It was in Miss June's toiletries drawer.
Sir.
My mother went still. My father's expression became unreadable. Alina whispered, "Oh no." I looked at the bracelet, then at my bathroom door, then at my own hands as if betrayed by them. I did not put it there. Then I reached into the pocket of my cardigan and placed a thumb-sized flash drive on the table. Because I did not need to. The footage played on the wall screen in my father's office 5 minutes later. At 4:12 p.m., Alina entered my room with a spare keycard. She wore gloves. No one said anything while the footage ran. There are moments when truth does not
Roar.
It settles like ash and makes every breath more difficult. Alina on the screen opened my toiletries drawer, tucked the bracelet beneath a stack of travel tissues, then closed everything with the efficiency of someone repeating a familiar task. She glanced once at the door before leaving. The camera captured the profile of her face in perfect clarity. When the video ended, my mother sat down because her knees could not hold her. That is not possible, she said first. Then why Alina did what clever people do when their lie dies in front of them. She pivoted. She began to cry. Because every room in this house echoes with June's name. Because I have been trying so hard to be generous and all anyone sees. I made one mistake. One mistake.
My?
Father's voice cut through her tears.
How?
Many other mistakes have there been. My mother covered her face. The cash in. June's desk, she whispered. The sleeping tablets in the guest room. Dear God. My father did not shout. He was dangerous. When calm, from this moment, he said, you will surrender every key, every card. You will not enter June's rooms again. Tomorrow we discuss where you will live. Next term, Father, I am not your father tonight. She flinched as though my mother looked shattered, but she did not contradict him. Only after Alina fled the office did my mother turn toward me.
June.
I thought I would feel triumph. Instead, I felt tired. This was only the one I chose to show you, I said. I did. That was what undid her. She rose, crossed the room, and fell to her knees in front of me, my mother, elegant and impossible, kneeling on Persian wool because she had loved the wrong girl too blindly and too long. I'm sorry, she said into my hands.
I am so sorry.
I did not pull away, but neither did I comfort her. Forgiveness offered too cheaply teaches people that pain can be repaid with words. Later that night, Adrian called. You have turned surveillance into morality. That sounds unflattering. It is meant as praise. I leaned against, looking down at the dark lawns where the gardener's lanterns glowed low among the hedges. She won't stop. No, he agreed.
Now.
She knows she is losing.
Then she will.
Become reckless.
Yes.
A pause. Then Adrian added very quietly, that is, when people show you their most useful secrets, the wrong person, conveniently, after my public refusal of his flowers and Alina's mounting distrust of him, Rowan began circling back toward me with the air of a man who believed all women eventually acknowledge his value. I let him, not warmly, not eagerly, just
Enough.
I answered 2 of his messages. With polite brevity, I asked one question about his charity robotics initiative during a donor dinner. I let him walk me from the gallery wing to the main staircase at a museum benefit, while 3 photographers loitered nearby. He thought he was rebuilding fascination. In truth, I was giving Alina a believable grievance. One Sunday, he sent a note proposing coffee as a truce between 2 misunderstood people. I forwarded it to, then I waited. The response came from inside the house. Not by message, but by sound of porcelain. Lamp shattering somewhere on the east. By evening, Alina had redone her makeup, apologized to everyone for her migraine, and asked whether I would accompany her to just us, she said. A fresh start. I
Nearly laughed.
A fresh start was exactly what she offered the first time before. I would like that, I told her.
My mother
Looked hopeful. My father skeptical. Adrian, who happened to be at the house, reviewing a merger packet with my father, glanced once in my direction and did not. The retreat estate belonged to a Keen affiliate. That made it perfect, private, discreet, and full of staff whose loyalty Alina intended to get me there, establish a paper trail of emotional exhaustion, sedate me, move me, and let the forged. So I made preparations of my own. I switched the tracker bracelet on my wrist. For a duplicate Adrian had sourced through, I stitched a second transmitter into the lining of my coat. I gave a sealed envelope to be delivered. To the police if I did not record a coded voice memo by 20A.
Saturday.
I asked my mother innocently whether the retreat had stable phone reception because I would hate to worry her if messages. Then I hugged her before bed. Not because I forgave her, because if things went
Wrong. I wanted her unease sharpened into.
The night before we left, Alina came to my room carrying chamomile sleep spray.
4
Tomorrow, she said.
I thought we could both use calm. I accepted it with a smile and watched her.
Leave.
Then I sprayed it over a tissue. The smoke turned green. Chloral hydrate. Derivative. Fast onset. Nasty hangover. She had improved her chemistry since last. The retreat was called Halcyon Grove, which should have warned everyone involved. It sat 2 hours outside the white stone cottages, indoor mineral pool, a meditation pavilion on the ridge, staff in soft gray uniforms who moved like. Alina played serenity to perfection. She requested side-by-side treatment. Rooms ordered detox broth, apologized for past misunderstandings, and asked whether I agreed to everything that brought us closer to the time she had chosen. At 9:30, she insisted we drink tea on. She drank from hers. At 10:15 a therapist arrived with a tray of essential oils and confirmed my aromatherapy. I said there must be some mistake because I had no booking. Alina looked surprised. The therapist looked more surprised. At 11, my door handle turned once, lightly. At 11:30, my duplicate tracker left the main path and began moving toward the service gate, on the wrist of a robe I had stuffed with. At 11:32, I followed the scent of clove cigarettes into the boiler. Corridor beneath the spa and found Rowan.
You were supposed to wait until 1.
Rowan hissed. The driver shrugged. Orders changed. From who? He jerked his chin. I entered without knocking. Alina stood beside a metal table with a syringe kit, a passport wallet, and my forged documents. On the floor lay a nurse's uniform and a dark wig. For one startled second, no one moved. Then Alina smiled with terrifying. You were meant to be asleep by now.
I am
Trying a new thing, I said. Consciousness. She picked up the... She will sign whatever needs signing once. She wakes up on the right paperwork. Mother will cry. Father will fund. And by the time anyone thinks clearly, she will be too unstable to take seriously. Again, she sounded almost bored. I took one step backward and hit the red handle for the bay roller door.
the steel. Shutter screamed upward.
Floodlights from the service road hit the room all at once. Police voices followed. Everything became noise. Rowan lunged for the driver, backed into a shelf and sent glass ampoules shattering over the floor. Alina did not run. That was always her. She trusted performance longer than circumstance deserved. June is having an episode, she shouted before the police. Please, she is sick. A detective cut her. Off! Miss Mercer, put down the syringe. She hesitated. That pause convicted her more effectively than any speech I could have made. By the time Adrian appeared in the doorway, coat open, rein on his shoulders, and a look in his eyes I had never seen, Rowan had his hands zip-tied and the staff driver had begun bargaining with 3 different versions of the truth.
You are bleeding, Adrian said.
I looked down. In the scramble, one of the broken ampoules had sliced my palm. It is not much.
He took my hand anyway.
Wrapped it in his handkerchief and turned to the detective. You have the loading dock footage? 3 angles, the man said. And the...
Phone intercepts your office filed this.
She understood too late that the retreat had been the trap, only not mine. We brought everyone back to the city before. My mother met us at the police offices in a cashmere coat thrown over evening. Clothes, face stripped clean of cosmetics. She looked from my bandaged hand to Alina. In custody, and then at Adrian standing. Half a pace behind me like judgment. I was suddenly too tired to speak. So, Adrian did. He recited the outline with surgical clarity, forged program documents, controlled substances, attempted coercive, conspiracy to fabricate medical, incapacity and collusion with Keene. Personnel. My mother closed her eyes. My father arrived 20 minutes later and aged 10 years while the report was read aloud. He did not go to her holding room. Instead, he came to me. He stopped 2 feet away, as though unsure what distance fatherhood now permitted, and said, I failed you once by losing. Then I failed you again by bringing your danger home and calling it kindness. I said the only thing that mattered in that, don't protect her this time. He bowed his head. I won't. And for the first time since I had returned, I believed him, because he had finally seen enough of her. The scandal detonated exactly at noon. St. Aurelia students live half online, half in hallways and gossip spreads. Faster than blood poisoning there. By the time classes ended, everyone knew. Some version of the truth, Alina Mercer. Arrested, Rowan Keene under investigation. And June Mercer, not unstable after all, but almost disappeared into one of the cleanest kinds of family crime, the kind. Cameras gathered outside the Mercer gate. My father said no press statement until legal advised. Adrian said that was. For once, my mother agreed with him.
We
Held the conference in the East Ballroom because it had the best sightlines and I stood behind the podium in a navy suit, tailored for someone older than 19, and read a short statement. My name is, I am the biological daughter of Adrian and Elise Mercer. Recent allegations regarding my mental fitness, travel status, or consent to private medical treatment are false. Law enforcement is investigating a conspiracy to remove me from the country under forged documentation. I also ask that the public remember there are many girls who never reach a microphone after such attempts.
I intend to speak for them when this is
Over. Then I stepped back. The room erupted in questions. Was Alina adopted? Had the family ignored earlier warning signs? Was Rowan Keane her lover? Had the Mercer board considered succession? That last one came from a woman in the front row with silver hair and a voice kind enough to sound cruel. I answered her, but fear is only useful if you can teach it where to stand. That clip circulated for weeks. Within a month, I used the civil settlement from the retreat case matched by my father under ruthless public to establish the Mercer Recovery Trust for survivors of trafficking, coerced confinement, and identity fraud. If my suffering had become useful in headlines, I intended to force it to become useful in law, housing, and money.
Rowan's father publicly disowned his son.
From all foundation appointments and
Privately tried to settle with everyone in.
Alina denied the ability to manipulate events directly. Finally wrote to me from detention. The letter arrived on thick cream paper because she still believed presentation could save content.
June, you have always.
I did what I had to do.
You think that
World rewards innocence. It rewards the person who acts first. If our positions were reversed, you would have done the same. I burned the letter. After reading it, not because she was wrong about me. I do act first now, but I do not mistake harm for destiny. Celia, because at some point I had begun calling Alina by her original orphanage name in my head, and one day the habit. The papers loved her then. Fallen heiress, adopted daughter turned schemer, golden, child in borrowed silk. Every article needed a fable, and she made a neat one. But neat stories offend me. I testified in a gray suit with my hair pinned back and no jewelry beyond my grandmother's repaired bracelet. Rowan testified after me and tried, at first, to frame himself as manipulated by an older, more emotionally volatile woman despite being 2 years older, wealthier, and entirely capable of buying his own moral. The prosecution dismantled him with his own messages. Celia said she loved the Mercer family and feared losing them. She said I had arrived with hidden
Hostility.
She said I flirted with Rowan and cultivated Adrian and used victimhood. Then the state played the retreat audio. Not the loading dock confusion, not the police entry, the private conversation from before, where she explained exactly how she intended to dose me, move me, and let the courtroom became very quiet. When she realized no theatrical recovery was possible, she turned toward me with
not hatred,
not even regret.
recognition.
At last she saw that I had not survived. Her once only to remain the same woman. The sentence was heavy but not enough for the years she took from me in both lives. Such is law. It punishes acts. It cannot restore trust or childhood or the version of a person who might have existed without fear. Outside the Miss Mercer, do you feel justice was
Served? No, I said.
I feel paperwork was completed.
That night.
My mother sat at the foot of my bed, the way mothers do in stories told by. Will you ever forgive me? She asked.
I may, I said.
But if I do, it won't be because you asked. It will be because you changed enough to make forgiveness useful. She absorbed the blow without defense. Then she said, tell. I told her to stop treating remorse like an heirloom she could polish and display. I told her to visit the Recovery Trust offices and meet the girls whose cases never became press conferences. I told her to stop apologizing for loving me too late and start proving she could love me well now. For once, she listened, and knew things deserved to be watched carefully. If Adrian Vale became important, to me it happened in increments small. A thermos of coffee left outside the conference room at 2000 A. Because he noticed I only remembered to eat if a text message containing a photograph of a ridiculous bulldog in a raincoat after My first TV interview ended with a legal pad filled with comments on my recovery trust proposal written in a hand. So severe it made compliments look. He never offered comfort directly. He offered reinforcement.
Structure.
Exit.
Routes?
A better class of weapon? One evening, months after the trial, we stood on the roof of a warehouse the trust had just acquired for conversion into the city below us looked like circuitry. Construction plans flapped under glass. Paperweights. The wind smelled of river.
You should sleep more, he said.
You.
Should smile less like a man considering.
Arson.
He glanced at me sideways. That was almost flirting. It was an occupational safety recommendation. He laughed an actual laugh, not the thin amused exhale he used in boardrooms, and for a moment the hard lines of his face changed enough to make me
June, he said after a while. If I ask.
use something direct. Will you answer it directly? That depends on the question. When your family tried to bring you fully back into, why did you ask for voting shares in the trust before you asked for a seat at the main board? Because I would rather control.
Good.
Then, softer, I used to think, survival and tenderness could not coexist.
You're making that theory inconvenient.
I did not know what to do with warmth when offered without demand. So I leaned on, charge me consulting fees then. He shook his head.
No.
I may have a different arrangement in
mind. There are men who confess with poetry, men who confess with hunger, and Adrian belonged to the last category. Strangely, I found it the most honest. I did not answer that night. Not because wanting is not the same as being ready. And for the first time in my life, I had something worth protecting from haste. He simply handed me his coat when the wind strengthened and walked me downstairs. Without touching my back, respect can be terribly seductive when you have known only grasping. On the second anniversary of my return, my father announced he would nominate me as executive vice chair of Mercer Holdings. The board protested my age. He asked which of them had prevented a
Hostile scandal stabilized the family.
name and built the most credible survivor. No one volunteered. The nomination passed. The newspapers predictably called me the Ash Orchard Harris because one columnist discovered my village had grown stone. The nickname stuck. I disliked it only slightly less than the ones they would have used if I had failed. At the private family dinner afterward, my father raised a glass and said to June, who came home and forced this family to become something less ashamed of itself. My mother added, and to the version of her we did not deserve, but will spend the rest of our lives trying to deserve better. They were slowly, imperfectly. Perhaps that is all adults ever do once their illusions are stripped. Adrian sat to my right because by then, everyone had stopped pretending he was merely external counsel. His hand brushed mine beneath the tablecloth once, asking without asking. This time I turned my palm upward. Later, on the terrace under winter stars. Sharp as pins, he said, I have reviewed your performance over the last 24 months.
That sounds
Ominous. It is favorable. Thank God. My conclusion is that I am in love with you, and that further delay is no longer strategically sound. I looked out over. Your proposal style is appalling. It was not a proposal.
Good, because I
Intend to keep my name, my shares, and final say over all wallpaper.
All.
Terms acceptable. And if I decide in a year that I prefer solitude, I will, brief and cold and certain enough to alter. Both are breathing. When I stepped back, Adrian closed his eyes for one heartbeat, then opened them. With the dangerous composure of a man, I laughed so hard I had to grip the railing. People like endings because they imply accounting. Pain balanced by love balanced by permanence. Life has never struck me as that tidy. Celia still writes letters sometimes through counsel. Rowan attempted one public rehabilitation interview and was mocked into silence. The broker network fractures and reforms in new disguises faster than any one task. Force can break it, which is why the trust. Some girls leave our houses and never look back. Some return every month just to sit in the garden and prove to themselves no. One of our first residents, a girl named Noor, now runs debate drills for younger survivors and has developed a terrifying. My mother has stopped asking for forgiveness directly. My father no longer assumes authority counts as intimacy. As for me, I still keep records. Every major call gets summarized. Every room I use for private negotiation has 2 exits. I carry backup chargers, emergency cash, and a small folding blade in handbags. elegant enough that no one notices the women in magazines call it paranoia. When discussing me, the women at the trust call it professionalism. I answer to the sometimes in the blue hour before. Morning. I wake with the taste of concrete, dust in my mouth, and remember the room. When that happens, I do not force myself. Back to sleep. I go downstairs. Usually I find the house quiet, the heating low, the city beyond the windows. Still deciding whether to become day. Sometimes Adrian joins me with 2 cups of coffee. Sometimes my mother is already there reading trust reports she could. Once my father looked up from the kitchen table at 4:30 in the morning and asked whether trauma ever gets bored. It just gets better furniture. He laughed into his coffee and rubbed his eyes like a tired old sinner. Maybe that, not peace. Better furniture, stronger locks, truer allies. A table where fear can sit without taking the head chair. This is the life I built from what should have buried me. I was the daughter sold twice and returned once. I was the girl who learned that family can be chosen after blood fails. That strategy can coexist with mercy, and that tenderness need not make a woman defenseless if she keeps her own hand on the key. If there's any moral in that, let it be this: never mistake a quiet girl for an empty one. Some of us are only silent because we are counting the doors, memorizing the exits, and deciding exactly how much of the house